Support for Kamala Harris is surging in Chicago tonight as the Democratic National Convention wraps up. Ken Kazarowski and Allison Fergit joins us live outside the United Center. How's it going over there, guys?
Emily, good evening to you. The energy is hot right now outside the United Center. Now, this whole night 4 of the DNC was kind of like being at a concert with a lot of openers that the crowd is very polite to, but they're all just on pins and needles waiting for that headliner. And tonight's headliner, of course, Kamala Harris. Her entrance around the 9:30 mark, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Now, Harris came out to Beyonce's song Freedom, which has been the song she's been using as an entrance all campaign season. She thanked her husband, President Joe Biden, Coach Tim Walz, as she said, and all the delegates and voters who have supported her campaign to this point. She says while her path to the ticket has been unexpected, she's no stranger to unusual journeys. Harris speaking at length about her late mother, who inspired her to not just complain about injustice, but to do something about it. She recounted her path through the criminal justice system as a DA and then Attorney General, saying she's always had one client, the people.
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Huge applause. About 40 minutes speaking at that podium. Not a lot of policy talk, but more campaign talking points, calling this election a fleeting opportunity to move past the divisive past and to chart a new way forward for not just one party, but for all Americans. She said she'd be a president to unite and fight for the people because the future is, quote, always worth fighting for. Now, Harris and all speakers this week argued that Democrats stand for a brighter future with things like codified abortion access, gun safety legislation, middle-class tax relief, lower health costs, and overall the freedom to live the life that you want. But they all also echoed concerns for the future under Trump, criticizing him for January 6th and saying that Project 2025, that playbook that has been written by advisors of the former president's administration, would take more freedoms away. And that tone was somewhat similar to the things we heard at last month's RNC when Republican speakers had kind of hammered home the idea that Democrats had made America as a nation weaker over the last 4 years, burying consumers under inflation and what Trump has continued to call a wave of migrant crime. Now, it's a couple of tonal shifts throughout Harris's speech and throughout this RNC, balancing that idea of hope and freedom and vision for a brighter future, but also trying to underscore that a Trump presidency is essentially a danger to American voters, Allison.
Yeah, and while Harris was the clear headliner, she was the star of tonight, there were a few other speakers that are worth noting and talking about those points that you just brought up. Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin gave a brief speech saying Trump would cut Medicare and Social Security. Earlier this year, Trump said he's open to cuts on those programs. Speakers also hit on gun control. Family members and friends of victims of gun violence urged for stronger gun control laws. Former U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords took to the stage with her husband, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. Giffords has become a gun control activist after surviving an assassination attempt that left her with a severe brain injury. During her speech tonight, Giffords gave a strong endorsement of Harris.
She is tough. She has grit. Kamala can beat the gun lobby. She can fight gun trafficking.
In 2022, the Biden-Harris administration was able to get Congress to pass the first major gun safety legislation in almost 30 years. Also making appearances tonight, members of the Exonerated Five, a group of men that were wrongfully convicted of sexually assaulting a female jogger in Central Park when they were just teenagers. Around the time of the attack, Donald Trump took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the men to be executed. Despite the exonerations, Trump to this day maintains the men are guilty. During their time on stage, the men said Trump is too dangerous for a second term. So as you were saying, a lot of anti-Trump talk that we heard tonight and a lot of pro-Harris, maybe not as much focused on policy, but really pro-Harris, thinking that she is brighter for the future.
And a lot of pundits have been yearning for more policy talk from Kamala Harris, something that I suppose we're just going to have to expect later on during the campaign season. But Both party conventions are now officially in the books, so it is now a full-on campaign sprint for the 70-plus days left until November 5th, the general election. For Allison Fergit, I'm Ken Kozarowski, live outside the United Center in Chicago for News 8 Now. Emily, back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you, Ken and Allison.